To start with, this comes from my Polynesian background and our ancient legends. If you are not aware, Polynesians are the world's greatest explorers, and like the great South American civilizations, do not fit into the current Western idea of history. This is common like the Australian Aboriginals, who until recently contained unknown DNA, which is now shown to be Denisovans. This is an amazing spread of these hominids and far larger than Neanderthals. So today on Unmasking Deception, we are looking at our ancient legends, and is Doggerland the real Atlantis? We also have new evidence towards the end which destroys what you learnt at school. Atlantis is not a Greek invention, nor is it a Dubai invention. It is an ancient Middle East tale. The story from Plato comes from Egypt, maybe the most famous case of cultural appropriation. Aristotle believed that it was an invention from Plato to teach philosophy. Both can be true, that it was a true story, a historical fact that was culturally appropriated and changed by Plato to suit his purpose. So both South Americans and Polynesians who have ended up so far away from the birthplace of civilization, and despite Western racism saying otherwise, clearly contained great sailing skills. Both peoples have legends of an advanced white civilization that gave others ocean sailing and navigation. They were called gods, well, sort of, which is where our modern monotheism idea of religion distorts things. Where these white givers of sailors were called gods, it needs to be put in the context of the religion and times, where gods are not like an all-powerful, all-seeing God, more an exalted status. In essence, it's a lost in translation due to the passage of time understanding. In my culture, any great tribal chief was escalated to god status according to Western historians. The problem is they don't really understand. We kind of think more like everyone is shitty, and if you do great things, then you have a little god in you. We don't take a knee, that is to acknowledge your ancestors, and you touch the ground, pray above. Death isn't the end, and we are all connected. Not gods in the Western sense, but part of us we believed almost in multiple dimensions, so it's hard for Westerners to understand. So these white people gave us sailing and navigation, while other skills came from other civilizations. They too were also gods by Western definition, but not for us, as our spirituality is different. No one prays to them, for example. So over time you have lost in translation, just like the game Chinese whispers. It's only our modern narcissism that means we think we understand. So the original Egyptian legends of Atlantis are not the same as Plato's version. It appears that he took those legends and then expanded them for his teachings of philosophy. Atlantis went from a trading nation of 12 settlements/cities with one great skill set to a super advanced civilization, an advanced Athens, so to speak. From sailors to super soldiers. Notice this is just like Christianity, which used existing similar dates from pagan religions, so it was appropriate for the audience, and adoption is easier. So Atlantis went from a trading nation of 12 regions to a super city state, which perfectly matches the political structure of ancient Greece. Or in YouTube jingo, you have to make the content relatable. Clearly Plato adapted this legend to his world, made it relatable and teachable. Our Polynesian legends were that this prosperous nation traded the gifts of sailing and navigation for the other gifts of probably construction and trade. It was vague on what they got, but it was trade, not gifts. So the legends were that Atlantis wasn't a city, but a group of peoples who explored and traded with the known world. They were explorers and traders, and they interacted with the great Egyptians. However, this is way before the current teachings of when Egypt was supposedly civilized. I repeat, this is the legends of brown people and not the classic story of Plato. My bias is I want it to be true, not for a Western history, but it highlights my people's legends and pushes us and the South Americans to the forefront. The forgotten greatest explorers of all time, the South Americans and Polynesians. Really, the South American story is just nonsense. They walked across and then just walked down the continent. Many of their legends are the same as ours. They sailed and were more advanced. Both people's legends, we stopped, got fat and lazy, and lost the skills. Sadly, a common fact of history. When the Romans lost Britain, within 100 years, the British lost the ability to build doors. Our human history has never been a straight line. There is institutional racism. Just look at when America was discovered. No one is really trying to establish when it was first discovered. How it was discovered, no, just when Europeans turned up. People were already living there. It was already discovered. This is where it becomes really exciting with DNA ancestry. What are the links between people? Are some of the legends that some of the South Americans sailed across the Pacific, Will DNA reveal all? The concept of myths and historical facts can be blurry, especially when it comes to ancient civilizations like Doggerland and Atlantis. Many stories have been passed down through generations, making it challenging to distinguish between what's real and what's not. Historians and archaeologists face the daunting task of uncovering the truth behind these stories. The search for evidence is a meticulous process that requires patience and dedication. AI is a great new tool as it can make connections between reams and reams of data. One of the most fun is that the Voynich Manuscript is derived from Doggerland. How, you ask, with the exploration of Doggerland by the oil companies discovering new plants? When you sequence the DNA of these plants and ask AI to create this as a plant, a few have shown up in the images in the Voynich Manuscript. Wouldn't it be fantastic if this is true and not just a coincidence? As we explore the history of Doggerland and Atlantis, it's essential to consider the sources and the context in which these stories were told. Doggerland's history dates back to the Mesolithic era, with archaeological findings suggesting a thriving community that lived in the region. The discovery of ancient tools and artifacts has shed light on the lives of the people who once inhabited this land. Comparing Doggerland to the legend of Atlantis, we find similarities in their descriptions as thriving civilizations that were lost to the forces of nature. Doggerland's significance in prehistoric Europe is undeniable, with its strategic location facilitating trade and cultural exchange. The legend of Atlantis, on the other hand, has been passed down through Plato's dialogues, describing a powerful and advanced civilization that existed in the distant past. The search for evidence of Doggerland's existence has been fruitful, with recent discoveries pointing to a catastrophic event that led to its demise. Geological data states that a tsunami and then flood devastated the region, causing widespread destruction and displacement. This is, of course, the destruction of Atlantis, where a devastating earthquake and flood led to the nation's downfall. How did this happen? Well, sorry if this shocks you, but it is also the major warning behind global warming. Approximately 8,200 years ago, there was the Storegga Slide off the coast of what is now Norway. Initially, it was described as an ice sheet collapse which destroyed Doggerland, the land bridge between the UK and Europe, possibly the most fertile and prosperous land known. This was the warning, with the ice sheet collapsing due to global warming and the dangers to man. Turns out that it wasn't an ice sheet collapse off Norway that caused the tsunami and flooding. The Storegga Slide was a series of massive underwater landslides that occurred off the coast of Norway in the Norwegian Sea around 8,200 years ago, approximately 6225-6170 BCE. These slides involved the collapse of a significant portion of the continental shelf, releasing an enormous volume of sediment. While it wasn't a traditional ice sheet collapse directly into the ocean, the Storegga Slide triggered a very large tsunami that swept across the North Atlantic. This tsunami would have had a devastating impact on the low-lying coastal areas of Doggerland that still existed at the time, perfectly mirroring the destruction of Atlantis. This alleged great sailing nation, not a super-advanced super-city state. It all ties into the legends of my people, South Americans, and comes from Egypt, not Europe, and even predates standard European history. In conclusion, our exploration of Doggerland and its potential connection to the myth of Atlantis has revealed a complex and fascinating story. From the challenge of distinguishing between myths and historical facts, to the compelling evidence that suggests Doggerland could be the real-life counterpart to the lost city of Atlantis, we've covered a lot of ground. Remember, we can't even in modern times recreate the great migrations of Polynesians, understand the spread of ancient peoples. No idea of the spread of Denisovans. All we know is our ancient history is wrong. We just currently don't know enough. All the native peoples talk the same legends. Great ancestors destroyed in a flood. Lost technology. It is weird it is the Europeans that say we are wrong, yet their definitions and theories make no sense. How do we know history is wrong, you ask? So many examples like this. Let's take a delicious food. Sweet potato, kumara. This is perhaps the most compelling piece of evidence. The sweet potato is native to the Americas, yet its presence in Polynesia predates European contact. Genetic studies have strongly suggested that the sweet potato was introduced to Polynesia from South America around 1000 to 1100 CE, likely by Polynesian voyagers who reached the continent and brought it back. Yet it is claimed that Maori didn't reach New Zealand until the 1300s, after the sweet potato was in New Zealand. Genetic links between Polynesians and South Americans. Some genetic studies have found subtle but significant genetic links between certain Polynesian populations and indigenous groups along the Pacific coast of South America, particularly in Colombia. While these links are complex and debated, they suggest some level of ancient interaction. If you follow the money, several patents have been taken on these unique genes. The legends of our peoples are that the peoples were sailing across the Pacific, with Egypt, which explains cocaine, etc., appearing in ancient Egypt. What are your thoughts on the similarities between Doggerland and Atlantis? Do you think there's a connection between the two? Would you like more in-depth videos on the histories and legends of our peoples? We are accused of being drifters. We have in-depth, fully referenced documentaries in our Patreon, including all our legends. The other completely racist description of the people is, we were just drifters. Except it is impossible to drift across the Pacific with enough food and water to support a breeding population. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're interested in learning more about ancient civilizations, be sure to check out our video on the mysterious city of Thonis Heraklion. Like, subscribe, and comment. Thanks for watching. Even if you disagree, it is our history, and something that formed our peoples. Just like King Arthur is English, whether based on legend or myth, the history formed future peoples. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. If you didn't, I thank you for watching.